So there's this common misconception from folks that might not follow Tesla as much as you and I might, in which they think that if they were to purchase an EV, they would need to replace the battery within a 3 to maybe 5 year time span. And let me just say right off the bat that that is just flat out false. So I wanted to take a look at Tesla's impact report to see what they actually say about it. And that way we can kind of get more clarity on really how long do Tesla's batteries last. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this is page 39 of the impact report that they recently released. And I highly recommend you take a look at the whole report. It does sound daunting when you hear that it's hundreds of slides long, but just a lot of pictures, very short text, easy to kind of read over, a cup of coffee or whatever it might be. So highly recommend you take a look at it. But in this particular slide, I wanted to point out what I have highlighted here, that Tesla clearly states that after 200,000 miles, that their batteries degrade just 12%. So that means that after 200,000 miles, you still have roughly 90% capacity remaining. So if we do some simple calculator math here to calculate roughly how many years on average that might pan out to, let's just say someone drives about 20,000 miles a year. If you divide 200,000 by 20,000 miles per year, you have a lifespan of about 10 years. So after about 10 years, your battery degrades roughly to 90%. So that already disproves the myth that once you buy an EV, you're going to have to replace the battery within the first 3 to 5 years. So that is just completely false. So if we keep doing a little bit more math here, I wanted to kind of extrapolate the details to see, okay, if it's 200,000 miles, you get 12% less. What if you actually are able to extend the life of your car to 500,000 or even maybe 1,000,000 miles? So let's go ahead and kind of walk through the different scenarios here. So I have the base case here where the battery degrades 12% after 200,000 miles. So if I do the math, you lose roughly 1% of battery capacity every 17,000 miles or so. Of course, this is linear. There are a lot more other variables that can play into this, i.e. the environment that you're in, whether it's cold weather, hot weather, of course, how you drive, whether you're driving mainly in the streets or in the highway, just different factors that could affect the longevity of the battery. And of course, the biggest one is the actual age of the battery, because batteries, as they age, they just naturally become less and less efficient. So anyway, the quick math here, you lose about 1% of battery capacity every 17,000 miles or so from a linear perspective. Again, it could vary over how many miles you drive or how many years you keep the car, but I think this is kind of like a good mathematical point to keep in mind. Okay, so next I have just a couple scenarios of how does the battery hold up after 500,000 miles and even 1,000,000 miles. So to start off at 300,000 miles, you've lost close to 20% of capacity. So that means you have roughly 80% left. At 500,000 miles, you've lost about 30, thus you're at 70%. And at 1,000,000 miles, you're roughly left over with about 40% battery capacity, if you can actually stretch the car out that long. So if we keep doing the math and apply this to, let's say, a Model Y, for example, that has roughly a 75 kilowatt hour battery with, let's say, a range of about 300 miles per charge, that roughly equates to about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So let's see how the Model Y battery potentially can hold up in these different scenarios as well. So basically, I'm saying at 300,000 miles, if you maintain this efficiency of 4 miles per kilowatt hour, your remaining capacity after 300,000 miles is about 60 kilowatt hours or so. So that's about a 246 mile range. After 500,000 miles, you have about 50 kilowatt hours left, which is about 200 mile range. And then after 1,000,000, you have a 30 kilowatt hour capacity left essentially, and it's about 120 mile range. So at that point, you really wouldn't be using the car much. So anyway, what's the point that I'm trying to make with all this math? The data that we have now where Tesla states that after 200,000 miles, your capacity decreases by about 12%. This is data on fairly, you can call it old battery technology. As you can see here, it's for the Model S and the Model X over the last 10 or so years. So if that is the case for old battery technology, it's pretty exciting to know that as Tesla continues to improve its technology and improve its capacity, that the 4680 battery cells with the different chemistries that they have that are far more improved than what we've had over the last 10 years, I would be willing to bet that we get much more efficiency out of these batteries. And I think Elon stated several years in the past where hopefully at some point Tesla can develop a battery that will last about 1,000,000 miles. And so imagine you would pretty much never have to buy a car again. I think this plays more into the robotaxi opportunity, where as you have a large fleet of robotaxis, you're going to need them to last you as long as possible. So there's that incentive to continue to improve the technology, continue to improve the capacity, to have that ability to have these cars last as long as they can, squeeze metaphorically all the juice out of them, and enable a very reliable fleet of robotaxis out and about in the streets. So anyway, to finish, I'll just read here what I've highlighted in blue from Tesla, that they often get asked, will I need to replace my battery at some point in the future? The answer is no. Since we've been selling EVs for over a decade, we have reliable data that shows us battery degradation over time. So no other OEM, no other EV automaker can make this point because they've just recently, over the last 3-ish years, really doubled down on producing EVs. So Tesla is really the only manufacturer that can authoritatively state this. So anyway, I think this is pretty impressive that even with old standard battery technology, they're able to get this much juice out of the batteries. So I do look forward to seeing how much better the newer technologies, the newer chemistries hold up over long periods of time. It could be really that once you buy a Tesla, you might never need to replace that car again. Hopefully, obviously, aside from car accidents and all that, but hopefully you can rely on that car for life, essentially. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for stopping by again. Really appreciate your time as always, and I will catch you on the next one.